Go Dude Horror here, and today we have chapter 4 of The Day I Hired a Hitman on Myself. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Well, frick me. This whole goddamn time I've typed out in this, and then my laptop died. So now I gotta write this whole fucking update again. If it wasn't for all the support and PMs asking when the next part will be out, I wouldn't have even bothered typing this all out again. But I know the feeling of getting your daily fix, and I didn't update yesterday, so I'm due to some events. So I guess I'll start all over. Anyways, frick me. Let's just get started again. I ended the last update with me driving away from my motel parking lot, and after a few seconds of me pulling out, Mike pulled in. If I had left even a few minutes later, he would have caught me in my room packing my shit. Or me packing everything up into my car. Did he think I was an idiot that wouldn't change places after he ended our conversation with "you'll be seeing me sooner than you think"? Or maybe he's just having just as much fun as I am with this game. After all, you don't take up this line of work without at least partially enjoy killing people. I'm probably giving him the same rush he's giving me, in that he probably doesn't expect his clients to actually go after him or even know that he's coming. Anyways, I got to my next hotel and took a shower that I desperately needed again, while singing that stupid freaking Iggy Pop song, I GGY. Who dat, and shaking my ass. It's like a freaking brain parasite, and the only way to get it out is to sing the song of its people, or some shit. I don't know, sue me. After I got out of the shower, I passed out on the bed after almost having killed a few hours prior. When I woke up, I knew I needed to get going again. After all, I was it. I went to Walmart to pick up a new phone and some supplies to make a few suppressors. Yes, I said suppressors instead of silencers, you happy now, gun fags. Anyways, as I walked down the aisles, watching all the fat-ass Americans on their scooters because they're too freaking lazy to walk, I started contemplating about how Mike even got my number. I picked up my new phone and a few cans of Cheese Whiz, along with a few other supplies for my suppressors. And no, I'm not going into on how I made them. I just pulled up the first guide online that showed me how. They're a real pain in the ass to make, you know. A few of you guys' suggestions on how to make them seemed a lot easier. Anyway, I was checking out, I took out my cash and looked at my phone I was about to buy. It dawned on me that when all of this started, I paid for my first throwaway phone with my card. I'm such a freaking idiot. That's probably how they tracked me down. I paid for everything and got back to my motel. The first thing I did was do some research to see if it was possible to get a phone ESN/MEID number just from a purchase. It turns out that it is possible to do. It just was a difficult process of going through Walmart's purchase database or the phone's manufacturer database. Frick, another mistake on my part. If I keep freaking up like this, I'm gonna end up dead. I took the rest of the day to make suppressors for myself, and turns out they're pretty good, except for the huge freaking Cheese Whiz mess that I had to clean up. I now had one for my 9mm and one for my P90. After all that was done, it was dark out. I wanted to see if Mike would somehow be able to find me with no card activity or cell phone at his disposal. So I waited. A day passed, then 2, then 3. After about a week and 3 hotels later, I figured out he was only able to track me when I used my card or slipped up somehow, like anyone who doesn't know a hitman is following them would do. Unless he was watching and studying me the whole time, which I doubt he was doing. By the end of the week of sleepless nights and constantly looking over my shoulder, I was almost completely out of cash on hand. I knew I needed to hit a bank or an ATM but as soon as I withdrew some cash from my account, they would instantly know I did, and the location I got it from. After a bit of thinking about this, I figured I could actually use this to my advantage. So I set out a little surprise little old Mike. After all, a week prior he set me up, so I figured it was time to return the favor. I traveled about 30 minutes to the very outskirts of northwest Las Vegas. I found an area that seemed perfect. My bank on one side of the street and a desert on the other, with lots of boulders and Joshua trees on the other side. As I was surveying the area, on one of the corners near the bank, I saw an ATV for sale. I saw an ATV with a for sale sign on it. I went to the door and rang the doorbell. A nice typical suburban dad answered the door with his little girl right behind him and hugging his leg, and looked up at me and said, "Can I help you?" He said, "Yeah, I actually saw that you had that Yamaha ATV for sale. I was wondering how much it was." He told me it was $1,500, and I told him that I was interested. We shot the shit for a while, and he told me about his family and that they just had another little girl, so he had not the time or money to keep this thing around. My time of fun and fricking around is on hold for a moment, I guess, he said, laughing a bit. I laughed back, and while I was looking at him, I kinda envied him. If I had a girl I loved a lot and some little ones that meant the world to me, I wouldn't be doing what I was currently doing, but that's neither here nor there. Sorry, I'm rambling. I told him that I was interested in getting it and how if it was okay if I ran to the bank to grab some cash. He told me that it was fine and he would be waiting outside. I got to the bank. As I was able to put my card into the machine, a thought grabbed my attention. As soon as you pull out this money, you're going to be on a time slot until Mike comes and checks out the area. I mentally prepared myself and pulled out the cash. It was time for us to meet again, this time on my terms. I ran back to the man's house with the ATV, and he was outside checking everything on it. I handed him the cash and quickly gave it a test drive around the neighborhood. I got back in a minute or two and thanked him for his time and wished him good luck on his newborn. I got in my car and told him that I was going to park it around the corner nearby the park. I came back for the ATV, as I was going to be riding it today. He said that was fine, and I took off. As soon as I parked at the park, I literally ran back to his house and hopped on the ATV. I had just put out the cash and knew Mike couldn't possibly be on his way already. But something inside me knew that I couldn't involve this nice gentleman that I had just bought this thing from. I wouldn't put it past Mike to break into their house and kill everyone in there just for a hint of my location. I drove the ATV back to the park and parked it right behind my car. I got my backpack out from the back seat and put my homemade suppressors and my 9mm in there. I slung the P90 on my back as I rolled up a few paper targets and put them in my pack in case I got stopped by the police. At least I had an excuse that I was practicing my shooting out in the desert. I eventually got about 400 to 500 yards out into the desert across from the bank. I set up one of the targets and fired 2 shots from both homemade suppressors from each gun. They both worked really well, with a small sound coming out of each of them. The sun started to set behind the mountains, and I got set up and parked my ATV behind a large boulder. When it got completely dark, I got on top of a boulder and lied down. I put on a black ski mask and a black shirt so I wouldn't be noticed out in the open. I flipped the cap of my scope up on my P90 and looked through it. I could see the bank dimly lit as well as the parking lot. Now all I had to do was wait. It had been around an hour and a half, 2 hours since I had took out the money, and Mike should be rolling up soon. I waited silently just as watched people come and go from the bank, but no Mike. Around 11 o'clock or so, I finally saw his black car pull up. He drove around the bank once and then parked in front of it. I immediately noticed that his plates weren't on his car, which struck me as odd. He got out and walked up to the ATM and had something in his hand with wires attached to it. He put it on the machine and turns his back to me. Perfect. I flipped the safety off and took the shot. Boom! Center mass. He fell onto the machine and pulled out his gun. How the frick is he even moving? I shot him right through the fricking back. He ran and ducked behind his car. I aimed for the tires. Boom! Back right tire. Gone. Boom! Back left tire. Gone. As soon as he knew the direction I was shooting from, he popped his head out and shot twice in my direction. But he couldn't see me in the darkness. It was great. I had another huge smile on my face. Now you know what it's like to be trapped, you son of a bitch. But this time, you had no getaway vehicle. Alright guys, I was planning on going farther than this, but I think I'm done for today as far as writing goes. I'll update tomorrow and hopefully finish this series up in a few days. I'll stick around but for a bit to answer questions and whatnot. Thanks for reading. Until next time. Edit. Holy shit. Thank you oh so much you gave me this gold. This is the first time receiving it, and I thank you so much, kind sir or ma'am. You're freaking awesome. I'm gonna do one more chapter in this video for you guys because I missed last night. So you guys will be getting 2 chapters today. How's it going? Sorry about not updating yesterday. I had a massive freaking migraine and couldn't even walk, let alone type an entire update. Anyway, here we go. I was sitting on top of the boulder and I had just taken a shot at Mike, who was standing in front of the ATM. I forgot to mention during the last update that he had a mask on when he got out of his car. I could tell it was him though with his suit and body shape. I took a shot at him and he fell onto the machine. I proceeded to shoot out his back tires on his Chrysler 300 to trap him. He was now a sitting duck with nowhere to run. He then went into the passenger side of the car and dove through the window. I don't even know what he was doing. He obviously knew that his back freaking tires were gone. He put it in reverse with the back rims grinding against the pavement. Then the car flipped around with the headlights pointing towards me. He gunned the car across the road and started hauling dick towards me. I shot a few times at the front of his windshield, but the bullets seemed to not go through. I figured that had some sort of light bulletproof glass or something of sort. The car had now hit the desert, still accelerating about 100 yards from the boulder I was perched on. I saw the driver's side door open and him bail out. I shot once at him, but missed. As soon as I took the shot, I jumped off the boulder right by my ATV. About 2 or 3 seconds later after I did, I heard a huge explosion and saw a gigantic flash of light envelop the dark desert. I started up the ATV, slung my P90 over my shoulder as I rounded the boulder, and I saw Mike's car engulfed in flames. I flew past it searching for him with my 9mm out. He was nowhere in sight. I gunned it to the bank and ran up to the ATM where he just was at. The weird electronic wires device was hanging out of it and was snow-sticking. I grabbed it and took off. I guess he'd forgotten it in all the commotion. I took off towards my car, still trying to look for Mike in the desert as I passed by again. Again, he was nowhere to be seen. I took off the ski mask and put it in my pocket as I was speeding down the street. I was so pissed that I let him get away. It wasn't going to be easy to get another chance like that one that I just had. As I arrived at my car, I heard sirens in the distance. I knew I couldn't just leave the ATV out in the open for the cops to find, so I found some bushes at the edge of the park. I took some wet wipes I had in my pocket and wiped off the handlebars in a few spots where I thought my prints would be. I ran quickly across as I could after finding the ATV and got into my car. As I was driving away, I heard more and more sirens in the distance. I hauled ass out of that area in order to not be linked with what just happened. It was about half an hour later, and I finally arrived back at my motel exhausted and angry that I missed my chance. I pulled the devices that I had just gotten out of my pocket and started doing some research. I didn't find much on the outer web, but the dark net I found similar devices. They were apparently for hacking into ATMs and pulling money out of people's accounts. I needed to figure out what he was doing with this thing, and so I drove to a nearby coffee shop and used their Wi-Fi. I checked my bank account and saw several $1,000s missing from my account. All the transactions were in $1,000 increments. One day after another, it blew my mind. They were taking money slowly out of my account in order to bankrupt me to slow me down. This just pissed me off even more than anything. They weren't playing the game that very fairly. Mike, whatever the frick that's supposed to mean. Mike, whatever the frick that's supposed to mean. I went back to the hotel and crashed. When I awoke, it was already daytime, around 10 a.m. I finally got a good night's rest. God knows I needed it. I sat up in my bed thinking technically Mike was it now, and I figured he'd be a bit pissed that I caught him by surprise. Oh, and on top of that, I destroyed his car to get away from me. And he probably had to walk for hours and hours back to his motel or call a taxi. It made me smile that I put him through all that. He really went through a lot to get out of that situation. I mean, shit, his goddamn car is rigged with freaking explosives just in case he was put in that situation like that. It dawned on me that I wouldn't know what vehicle he was in now, which would make my life much harder, which he could be in any vehicle at any time, which sucked. I just sat on the edge of my bed thinking about all of this, and there was a knock on my door. My adrenaline was pumping. I heard a key card get put into the slot, and the door handle jiggled a bit before opening. I grabbed my Glock and chambered around and dove beside my bed. The door was caught by the chain lock. I looked to see a little Mexican housekeeper looking at me. I put the gun behind my back and stood up. "Housekeeping?" she said, looking at me. "No thanks, come back later," I said to her. She shut the door as I hear her walking away. I had a huge sigh of relief and unchambered the round. Frick, lady, you could have been shot. Weren't they supposed to say housekeeping before they opened the frickin' door? I sat down on my bed and slid my hands over my forehead and through my hair. I could tell my body was having a hard time with all this shit going down. I got up and took another shower. I stayed in that night in order to take out. The next day I switched motels and chilled out. I took another few days to chill out and recoup from everything that had happened. On the third day in this new motel, I needed to get to the end of this game fast. After a few hours in my room and not coming up with a single freaking idea, and stress as all hell before I couldn't come up with anything, I decided I'd go down to the strip and play a little poker to get my mind off everything. I went down to the Flamingo Hotel and started playing a bit. After a few hours of playing and winning a good amount, I decided that it was time to pack it up and quit while I was ahead. I cashed out my chips and headed out to walk the strip for a bit. It was so crowded and crawling with cops, I knew Mike wasn't going to take the chance trying to shoot me here. As I walked and noticed the Bellagio fountains started up, I stood across the street admiring them, and as soon as my mind got admiring them, and it took my mind off everything that was going on for a brief moment. As soon as my mind got sidetracked with the beauty of the jets dancing around one another, I saw something that shocked me to my very core. There was Mike walking in a thick crowd of onlookers watching the fountains. Holy freaking shit. Out of all the people in the whole freaking city, there's the one person that I was looking for right in front of me. He hadn't noticed me at all. I started trailing behind him on the other side of the street. I lowered my baseball cap and kept watching him. After always a few feet behind so he wouldn't see me. He eventually made his way to the Aria Hotel and walked in. I waited about a minute and then walked in. Just as I saw him make his way to the room elevators, no freaking way. I knew where he was staying. It was a 1 in a million. But something out there gave me a break. And put him right in front of me. I walked up to the lobby receptionist and gave her some bullshit story about how me and my buddy got separated and I needed his room number to check if he was there. She asked for his first name and last name and I gave it to her. She typed in some things into her computer and gave me a room number. I couldn't have gotten more lucky. The more I thought about it, the more sense it made. If I were him, I'd want to stay in one of the most crowded hotels in Vegas. It makes getting found a lot harder. I thanked her for the information and took off. I made my way back to my car and drove back to my motel. I got in and took out one of my spare manila envelopes. I put the ATM hacker gizmo in it and a note that said Red Rock Canyon, 6 p.m., 2 days from now. Take scenic loop, Doctor to White Rock Mountain Road, and turn right. Keep driving until the road turns to dirt, and keep going some more, and you'll see an older car parked on the side of the road. I'll be waiting. You're it. I ran back to the car and back to the Aria with the envelope and room number in hand. I took the elevator up to his room. A nice suite. I wrote Mike on the front of it. I took out some tape that I had, stuck 2 pieces onto the envelope, and stuck it to the door as fast as I could without making any noise. Hopefully no one would take it. This is my only chance to finally finish all of this. I ran back down to the casino floor and got to my car. As soon as I got back to my room, I started to prepare. I took out my 50 cal and started to clean it, from barrel to butt. I couldn't frick this up like last time. I started to put the gun back together, and there it was again, that big ol' smile back on my face. Alright guys, this is the end. There'll either be 1 or 2 more parts in this series. Again, sorry for not updating sooner, and I will short update tomorrow. If you have my word. Again, thanks for reading. Until next time. Hey, first off, I want to apologize for taking so long to update. Secondly, I want to apologize for not update when I said I was when some of you guys asked. I currently have a massive freaking migraine, so I'll try to write as much as I can, as all the events have been happening over the past few days, and I'll continue where part 5 left off. Thank you guys again for all the support and encouragement. I started this series simply in case the inevitable happened to me. I wanted at least one person to know what really happened to the nameless, faceless author that keeps typing up these posts and putting them on the internet for everyone to see. They might be able to cover up any evidence they see fit to cover up to make any tragic disaster look like an accident, but the one thing they can't do is erase all of the knowledge what really took place that was now hidden deep inside one person's mind. But instead of one person knowing the truth, something amazing happened, and thousands, possibly tens of thousands of people that are located all over the globe now know. And that was something that no company, no matter how powerful, could erase. So, thank you guys. Honestly, I owe you. I got done cleaning all my guns at my hotel room, and then I proceeded to go to Walmart to get a few extra out-the-door items, along with the things I had brought home in a case. In any case, I could no longer stay in a hotel room and had to do a little camping. I picked up about a 10 of 5-gallon propane containers, 2 big 10 gasoline containers, a big bottle of Jack Daniels, and some other odds and ends to keep me sane if I had to wait for him. After all he did, he had a reputation for taking his time to prepare and plan for whatever he was about to do, unless he was setting a trap for me. He really got this shit moving when the ball was on his court. Unfortunately for him, it wasn't this time, so I was prepared to wait. I stopped at the gas station to fill up my tank and the 10-gallon gasoline drums that I had just bought. Once I was done, I headed up to set up and wait. I arrived around 11 p.m. I told Mike to meet me at Red Rock in 2 days when I left him the note. I figured he was going to take the day and look between and check out the places for advantage and disadvantage, cover terrain, and which spots would offer the greatest advantage over the other, etc., etc. High ground with lots of cover, I had already done this week before, and I luckily have spent my fair time in the hiking alone, just to get out of the city, even if it was just for a moment. You'd be surprised how much more you can take in when you hike alone and don't have any distractions when more people are coming. I knew this area particularly well, almost like the back of my hand. Mike didn't, so I had a few ideas on where I could lay a trap for him if he decided to come the next day and do some scouting. I knew it wouldn't be good for ambush areas, somewhere I wouldn't expect and where he would have a extreme tactical advantage. There was an area about 2 miles in from where the paved road turns to dirt. Big boulders surrounded the road, along with tons of wild bushes and trees. Monsoon season was just coming to an end, so the vegetation was nice, thick, and provided lots of sight coverage. I was also planning on parking my car after this area in order to provide the illusion that that was where I was, where I would ambush him. However, that's a big overhang plateau formation in the distance. It had 3 great perch areas that looked over this entire stretch of road for about 1.5 miles in each direction. This is my best chance I had. I needed to take it. I arrived around 11 p.m. and parked my car way off the dirt road and on the line and out of line of sight from people that would be driving by. I packed up all my gear I would need for the night and started to trike up the area I chose to watch from. I only brought 2 of my guns, my 9mm just in case. It's always good to have a good backup. And my baby that was a little hungry to do some hunting, the Bear 50 cal. I finally trekked up to the plateau, got my rifle set up for a good shot of incoming traffic. It was around midnight at this point, and I figured I'd just relax with some Jack and some pretty shitty easy cooked meals for a bit. I had no internet or phone service, so it was good old-fashioned books and a few good comics to keep me entertained. I had other stuff in the back of the car, but I was content for the night. Around 2:30 to 3 a.m. I heard a car coming down the dirt road toward me. I was a little curious, as no one usually would be out here at this time of night. I figured it was a park ranger or some love-crazy kids that just wanted to be alone, worried about either as I had hidden the car extremely well, and didn't have any electronics or anything that would alert people to look up in my direction. I watched as the car got closer and closer to the area. I was planning on leaving the car for Mike to see, but a blue Toyota RAV4 had rental stickers on the side of the car, which made me think that it was some tourist enjoying the desert at night. But then once I started thinking about it, someone who doesn't know the area, especially while traveling at night, wouldn't even leave the scenic route about, let alone come to some random off trail in the middle of bumfrick Egypt. It dawned on me that Mike probably had to rent a car as well. His blew up. Oops. I waited for a minute after being stopped at the area for a minute. Someone got out of the car, and holy shit, it was Mike. He had a freaking big ass bulletproof jacket on, along with some huge assault rifle. It looked like an AR-15, but way more decked out and more like something freaking Rambo would use to mow down people in the forest with. I waited for him to drop his guard and look around a bit, and I took a shot. Missed by a bit. Holy shit, how dumb could I be? I didn't reset the scope after cleaning the gun. Freaking details, man. So, I went to another perch point and reset the scope. Then I added a bit of other things into the equation, like distance and angle, and everything checked out. Mike was behind a boulder that was blocking my view and where I had shot him at first. But this new perch was just right by the side of it. He slowly inched his way into my scope, and I lined up the shot. Boom! Holy frick, this gun sounds beautiful. The bullet drop was a bit more than I anticipated, so I hit him in the knee. The bullet blew his freaking leg completely off his body from the knee down. I shot the I shot out the gun 3 times to disable it and emptied the clip. I had made my way down to him and he was looking at me with a shocked look like, "How the frick did you hit my leg?" I put a tourniquet on his leg, but of course searched him for his weapon first. He still had that original 9mm with a suppressor on that he first shot at me with. Memories, man. I then shot him up with an EpiPen I always kept in my first aid kit to keep him alive a bit longer. A bit cruel, yes, but I didn't want it to end just yet. I had other things for him to see. I dragged him over to his car and put him in the front seat so I could watch him. I went over to him with the bottle of Jack and asked him if he wanted a last drink. He sure took that freaking opportunity up. That's for damn sure. I loaded all of the propane tanks into the back along with both of the gasoline containers. We drove for about 45 minutes, him barely awake but still fully conscious, and really enjoying the Jack. We got up a little ways back to the HWY in Mount Carlston and eventually got a good straightaway with a sharp turn at the end, but nothing but a little guardrail between the road and about a 13,000 foot drop. I found a good-sized rock on the side of the road and started to pour gas all over the inside of the vehicle. All Mike did was close his eyes and wait. When I was done and about to launch it, I went up to the door and asked him a simple question. "You want it fast and quick, or long and horrible?" Looked at me with a smile and held up a nearly empty bottle of Jack. "Fast, but let me finish this first." He chugged the rest of it and said something I'll never forget. "I definitely don't want to die just yet, but you sure set up a hell of a game for your hell of a freaking game for yourself." He knew I had put the hit on myself right after I left him that very first note in the apartment saying, "Tag, you're it." He looked forward out to the windshield and up to the sky and said, "Do it. Make it quick and clean. And light this fucking thing and get the fuck out of here." Until the very end, he was a damn good sport about it. If the tables would have been turned, I don't think I would have been so nice about it. Boom. In one temple, out the other. I set the gas on fire in the back first, and then placed the car on drive. I then let it fall on the gas pedal, and the car took off. Straight to the right a bit, but it was going pretty damn fast. By the time it hit the edge, I was walking for about 5 or 6 minutes before the propane tanks exploded. They can handle a bit of heat, I guess. They went off one after another, and the last 4 or 5 of them all went off at once. Boom! I got off the highways and started walking the trail back to my area. And that's all of this should have ended, but I'm sorry to say that it hasn't. Mike and I met for the last time at Red Rock Canyon about 6 days ago. And ever since then, some weird shit's been going on. I really don't know for sure if they're all connected. It's obvious that some of these occurrences do, and the pieces are fitting together and constantly leading back to one thing: the organization I originally hired. But my mind is trying to make me seem that everything that's happening to me in the past 6 days, all of them fit together. I fear I'll miss something if I don't make them fit. Something that would end up saving my life possibly. In the end, I'm just mashing up all of my experiences and clues I've gathered from the past 6 days, trying to find some sort of picture of the game they're playing with me. All I know is that ever since Mike and I finished our game of tag, my life has gotten completely turned upside down. Enemies are everywhere, and worse yet, I don't even know who they are and what they look like and what they want from me. I can't trust anybody except for the people I knew before starting this game in the city. And in this city, I don't have a whole lot of options. First off, for the past 6 days, I've been having massive migraine headaches. It literally feels like an ice pick slamming the different parts of my brain with each pulse of my heart. I got regular light headaches even so often like any other person does. They were nothing some Advil couldn't fix. These are different. They're happening every freaking day, multiple times a day, and nothing I take gets rid of them. I have to wait for them to pass, which takes a few hours. I can barely stand when they happen. The light aggravates them. I even have to set my laptop on its lowest light setting to minimize this. Secondly, 3 days ago, I was waiting for a light intersection in Henderson, a city connected to Los Angeles on the south side. The left turn light turned green, but other lights for people that wanted to go through the intersection was still red. So I remained stopped, patiently waiting with no other cars in front of me. The first car turning left started through the intersection. Then out of nowhere, a car going at least 60 or 70 miles per hour barrels through and T-bones the car. The car that was T-boned was spun a few times and ended up on the other side of the intersection, finally stopping by the corner of the sidewalk to the left of my position, while the other car that sped through the stop barely made it through the intersection, coming to a grinding halt as its engine dropped and front completely caved in. Everyone slammed on their brakes and the intersection was pretty much wide open, so I hit the gas, drove through, parked my car in front of her with my right side wheels up on the curb. I jumped out of my car and ran to hers, praying she was okay, and attempted to open the driver's side door, but it was caved in all the way. The other car had impacted, so the door lock was busted to shit from what it looked like. I ran to the passenger side and unlocked the door through the broken window to see the unconscious woman strapped in what looked like a metal death box. I had an unbelievable sense of recognition come over me, like I knew her or had seen her somewhere, but I had no idea. Like when you're walking past someone that you've seen shooting at your favorite grocery store, or recognizing someone that jogs around your block in the morning, only this time you're both standing in line to buy a movie ticket. You recognize them, but you don't know her, and you know you've seen them around somewhere, but you can't remember exactly where. I quickly pushed it out of my brain in order to focus. I tried to get her out of her seat, but I couldn't access the belt buckle latch attached to the seat, and I was completely encased by the caved-in driver's side door. I searched my pockets frantically for my pocket knife and cut through the belt. As soon as that was done, as I carefully as I could, set her down on the curb just outside the passenger side of the car. Adrenaline is quite the chemical when it fully kicks in and is flowing through your body. She felt like she only weighed 30 pounds when I picked her up. As I was laying her down on the sidewalk, I saw a little chunk of metal sticking out of her, right of her right thigh through her tight jeans. It was protruding out about 3 inches, but I had no idea how far it extended into her thigh. I took off my belt. It's funny, I actually refer to this as my lucky belt. Ever since I got away while running from the cops drunk in college, and because of all the other ridiculous situations I've gotten out of while wearing this, it's stretchy with no designed loop, so it fits around anything as small as a stop sign post to something as big as the fattest contestant on the season premiere of The Biggest Loser. I slipped it around her leg and pulled it as tightly as I could, a couple inches above where the metal was sticking out. Right as I did that, she opened her eyes very slightly and looked at me. In a few seconds, she closed them and she blacked out again. I kept my fingers on her neck to feel her pulse, and it was there, faint, but it was there. I lifted up her leg really quickly to see a red pool of blood and a stain as a pool of blood started gathering around and underneath her thigh, trapped there due to her tight, skinny jeans. Every 30 seconds or so I checked, and thankfully it wasn't getting much bigger. Looking back at it, it seems like time itself was going slow, and as I got her out of her car and tended to her injuries, I completely blocked out the world around me. As soon as I knew she wasn't going to bleed out, I heard the faint sounds of sirens in the distance. Reality snapped back as soon as I looked to survey the scene. Mostly people were just standing around on the opposite side of the street where I was, some on their phones, presumably to 911, and others just shocked at the accident they just witnessed. I looked over to see two people pulling the man who ran the red light out of his car. His car, about 2/3 in length as it used to be. Even a bit of the front doors of the car were warped a bit. Explains why he couldn't get them open. It maybe took the paramedics 4 or 5 minutes to get to the scene, but it felt like an eternity. 2 ambulances came flying to their location. One went and picked up the other, parked by the other man's car, and one parked in front of mine. I checked their pulse one more time, and it was still there. Faint, and it damn sure seemed to be clinging to life. But nevertheless, it was there. As soon as he took her vitals and gave her a quick look, he asked me for a quick summary of what happened. I explained, and she was going to make it. To my relief, she said yes, and explained that she might not have made it if it weren't thanks to me. Putting the Mr. Lucky Belt and the fact that I had left that object in her leg. I learned as a young boy in Boy Scouts never to remove an object that's stuck in a person, as it can lead to more blood loss and then very quickly death, and proper tourniquet placement on the arms or legs to prevent a person from bleeding out. I chuckled a bit inside. Who would have freaking imagined that I would actually put the stuff that I learned from my first aid badge to use in real life? He asked if I wanted my belt back, and I told him no, to attach a note to it and explain that it was her lucky belt now, and that it saved her. We laughed for a quick second, and then he agreed as I turned around to see a police officer was approaching me. That it was her lucky belt now, and that it saved her life. We laughed for a quick second as he agreed, and I turned around. A police officer He asked me if I'd give a statement as to what happened, and I agreed. I turned around and he asked me to follow him to his car to get the paperwork. As I saw the other man sitting up on the stretcher and the other EMTs pulling him out, he yelled and slurring his words and acting as any obliterated person would after they just had caused a bad accident. I kept looking at him as he seemed familiar as well. I didn't recognize him as well as I did the woman I'd helped, but I had definitely seen him before. I knew him. I heard him shout in a drunken manner at the EMTs, My bronch didn't stop. The brake pedal didn't do nothing. I couldn't sad. We continued to the cop car as I gave him my statement. As we were finishing up, another cop came to the side of him and chuckled a bit and said, "The guy's BAC was a 21 according to the breathalyzer." We also found a half-empty beer can on the passenger side door. He's saying something there about his brakes not working, but he's just fricked up. He's probably hitting the gas pedal instead. The officer took my statement, nodded, and the other cop walked off back to the scene as the tow truck had just arrived. The officer was taking my statement, turned and pulled a pad and pen on the seat of his squad car. "We're done here," he said in a serious tone, and turned to walk away. I told a few steps away and heard him say, "Oh, by the way, yeah? I heard you save that woman's life by slowing the bleeding down until we got here." I turned around and said, "I don't think I saved her by any means. I was just trying to give her as much time as she could until the paramedics arrived." I was turning around and started to walk away and heard him say in a quiet, deep voice, "Sounds like you did the opposite to the other guy who flew off the mountain." Mountain pass on the other side of Mount Charleston a few nights ago. Perfect place to go off to. It must have been a 1,000-foot plunge or more. I stopped dead in my tracks. All the blood in my face fled. Replied with replaced with a substance that felt colder than liquid nitrogen, frozen there, without turning back around to face him. Excuse me? I asked my very soul, not wanting to hear his answer because I knew. As I heard him say, "Oh, by the way, yeah, excuse me?" I asked, my very soul not wanting to hear his answer because I knew I was completely fricked. "Oh, nothing. You save one life and end another. I think that God would call that even, don't you think?" he said, his voice getting more and more cheerful after each syllable left his mouth, like a proud hunter knowing his prey was cornered and no possible way to escape. Feeling like I was frozen in a block of ice having nowhere to go, I replied, I can't really say. God hasn't said anything to me yet, but I'll let you know when he does." As I spoke, I literally felt like a dead man walking, like this man behind me was taking the very energy out of my soul as he stared at me. He started laughing. "Well, who knows? You might get the chance sooner or later, don't you think?" he said, and then his voice suddenly going back to the previous deep monotone darkness it was before. "But who am I to say?" I heard him turn around and take a few steps into his cop car and shut the door behind him. I was just standing there frozen until I heard the car door shut, causing the regular world to return as I slowly walked back to my car. And after this occurred, my laptop I was using as a catalog after everything before to check my bank accounts was pretty much all the information on it that I needed to stay ahead started acting up about a week ago, randomly closing internet tabs, me being in the middle of writing an update on no sleep on my laptop would shut itself down, and the final straw was when my command bar popped up on its own and writing out, "We are watching, we are everywhere," without me even touching my computer. They now had complete control of it, and it was useless to me. So I had to get a new one and make sure that doesn't get hacked. Anyways, guys, looking back at what I just typed, I pretty much wrote a whole freaking prologue to what happens after the game. I'll update if it continues on from here, but don't count on every day or every other day updates like I've been doing. Thanks for reading, everyone. And oh, sorry if there's typos. I had to type this all out very quickly because they seem to show up within a few hours of wherever I go. Later, it's been fun, and I hope you've enjoyed. So guys, that was The Day I Hired a Hitman on Myself. Chapter 4, 5, and 6. There's one more chapter, and then a part 2, which is the day I was forced to become a hitman. So if you guys want to see that, leave a like. And tomorrow I will finish with chapter 7, which is the final chapter of The Day I Hired a Hitman on Myself. And then Saturday I will upload The Day I was forced to become a hitman. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I shall see you guys in the next story. Stay scary.